Hey y'all, happy Sunday and welcome to this week's live Q&A session. This is the portion of the show where we allow YouTube to send out notifications that we're going live. If you're watching this live Q&A on replay, please scrub ahead until this graphic disappears and the actual show begins. If you're watching live and you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and put them in the live chat. But for now, grab a beverage, sit back, and relax while the countdown timer does its thing. Then we'll get started. Aloha! Happy Sunday, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope life is treating you well. Welcome aboard. If this is the first time you've been here, You'll notice that I have subscribers only mode turned on. Sorry it has to be that way, but I had to do that because of bots and trolls trying to come in and just basically take over the chat and the live stream. So you must be a subscriber to my channel for at least one day, at least 24 hours, before you can comment in the chat, before you can participate. So my recommendation is subscribe now. Then next week you'll be able to participate in the chat and ask any questions, make any comments that you'd like. Sorry it has to be that way, but that's the world we live in. What can I say? Today is an open Q&A where we're going to get into your questions and answers. Your comments, questions, concerns, whatever you may have, whatever they may be. Just feel free to put them over in the chat. Before we do that, however, I want to give a shout out to and say a special thank you to Steve over at Harneal Media, sponsor of MarkLindsayCNC.com, my website. Look, I'm going to be frank with you. No, I'll be Mark, but I'll be truthful with you here. I've been singing Steve's praises over at Harneal Media since day one. I'm very proud to call him a friend, and I'm very proud to say that Steve handles my website. And if anyone were to ask me anything about my website other than, do you know what you're doing? I just refer them to Steve. And that's what I'm going to do right now. If you are even toying with the idea of your own website, maybe you've got products or services you want to put in front of the public at large, and you don't know anything about websites, kind of like me, you're clueless. You owe it to yourself to go over to Harneal Media and hit that contact us link and shoot Steve a message. Again, if you're an absolute beginner and have no idea what you're doing with a website, like me, then by all means, Steve will take care of you. If you're a seasoned veteran and you know what you're doing with a website, not only have you got my respect, Steve will work with you. He's very, very competitively priced. He'll do as little or as much as you want. So if you're looking for maybe a blog, or you're looking to create a web store where you can offer your products and services to the public at large without paying a commission and without having listing fees and without having your competition advertised on the same page that your products or services are being advertised on, it's time to take control of your business. Get over to harnealmedia.com, click on that contact us link, and shoot Steve a message. Now you'll find a link to Harneal Media in every live stream and every video on this channel, over 700 of them. And it's that way for a reason. Thank you very much, Steve, for A, sponsoring the website, and B, doing everything you do in front of the scenes and behind the scenes. Appreciate it more than you'll ever know. Okay, we've had a couple of questions already come in, and I've got them kind of sitting in the back here. But one of the first things I wanted to talk about today, I've had a couple of questions in dealing with text. I believe one was in VCarve Pro and one was in Aspire. And we got those things taken care of. They were pretty basic. But there were a couple of things that folks didn't realize you could do with text. And it's just a simple matter of not knowing. So I'm going to go ahead and show those to you just simply to kind of get them out of the way. These were things that people didn't know could be done with text. So let's go ahead over here. I'm in VCarve Pro this time, VCarve Pro 12.505. And I'm just going to jump into the text tool. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about was font choice. Okay. Now, if we get into the font list here, now watch, it's going to be the same here. Yeah. All right. We see here, I've got a bunch of fonts that have this little @ symbol. before the name. So if I just select one of those fonts and I type out here, we see my little box out here. This is a placeholder where the text is going to be created. And I start typing. We see that the text runs vertically. And that's all well and good. But what is that? Well, it comes down to that little @ symbol. That little @ symbol tells the software that this font is meant to run vertical. Now, why it is that way, I don't know. We can take that text and just using the number 9 on the keyboard, we can rotate it in 45-degree increments and get our standard horizontal text. And that's all well and good. But why is that? Well, the reason for this is, I'll go back here. The reason for this is other software uses this little @ symbol for various reasons. So while you can go online and you can find these fonts that have the little @ symbol as their first character, these are generally used by other software packages and not Vectric Software. Vectric Software will determine them to be vertical fonts, and that's just the way it is. Now, an issue comes in when you have multiple lines of text. So let me back up, remove my name here, and I've kept it horizontal for a reason. So I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to go, there we go. Hit enter, CNC. All right. Now I kept this horizontal on purpose so you could see it and you can see the issue. Up here you'll see I've got my first name, my last name, then CNC. But out here it went from the bottom up. There is a reason for this, but it's a weak reason. I'm the first one to admit that this is a weak reason. I think it would be better, yeah, it's better served if I do this over and let it be vertical. So let me delete all that, then we'll start over with this. Got my same font, and I go, yep. Yep, I did it again. I got to go back and I forgot my hard return. And that's the way I'm doing several lines, is I'm just putting a hard return after the last character, no space. Okay. Then I'll close that. Now, I said this is a weak reason, and it is very weak. Okay? We read from left to right. Now, when the font runs vertically, it's entering, select this, go back in here. It's taking the first line, which we're going to read, and it's putting it at the left. Then the middle line stays in the middle, and the last line stays to the right. Now, another thing to look out for is this green square right here. That's the start point. Okay? That's the start point of this text object. And it's going to start right here and go that direction. That's why when you get a hard return and you're putting things on 3 different lines, this being your start point, it's going to go this direction. Everything you enter. And when you think about it, we read left to right. It makes sense. But again, that's a very, very weak reason for it to do this. It should still be Mark Lindsay CNC. But that's not how we read in English. We read left to right. It puts the start point here. Personally, I think it should put the start point here. However, with this being the first line of text created, it doesn't know where we're going to go from here. So it makes the start point the bottom, in this case, the top left corner, but it is the bottom left corner of this text object. Now, I know that's confusing and it doesn't make any sense, but if you think about it in terms of the bounding box for this text, and remember, that is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the bounding box. So if I turn it this way, that you see that bounding box appear. And the start position of that bounding box is right here on this bottom corner. So everything is going to go this way when we're dealing with multiple lines of text. Now, I know it doesn't make any sense, but there's a workaround. There almost always is. There's a workaround. And that is, we can split this up so that each of these lines can be moved around. So we'll select it. And here was the thing that I was showing this yesterday in a members only live Zoom call, just a general BS session. But this is something that a lot of people don't know that you can do if you have a big block like this. As you can right click and go up to text here in the context menu, and you break the block into lines. Click on that, and now each of these lines is a different line of text. So now they can be moved and arranged however you want them. Now again, it's a workaround. It's not something that you would think would be logical, you know. But it is a way to get the desired result should you want it. Now, again, that's if you're dealing with the vertical text. Delete. If you want vertical text and you don't have any of these fonts with the @ symbol at the beginning of them, again, it's very easy. Come down here. We'll go into, some of these don't get enough. We're going to go with A.R. Delaney. What the heck? All right. And we're just going to go for standard text. Whoops. A.R. Delaney. And we'll say, oops, did it again. Hard return. Hard return. I don't know that I like that font. To each their own, but what the heck. Now, if I really want vertical text, again, tap the number 0 on the top row of my keyboard here, not on the number pad, but on the number keys above the letters, type 0. And there we go. Now I have my vertical text, and it's in the correct order. Again, it's a workaround, and it may or may not give you exactly what you're looking for. But it's a way of achieving the exact same end result without trying to figure out what the heck is going on here. So I'm going to Control Z twice, 3 times rather, and then go ahead and center it back up. Select it. All right. So that is just a couple of little things about dealing with vertical text. It's not a it's not mandatory that you go out and you find those fonts that have the @ symbol in front of them. And just know that the rules are a little bit different when you're dealing with those fonts. Personally, if I want vertical text, like I said, all I do is I, rotate it by myself. I just go ahead and use a regular standard font. There are a lot more of these standard TrueType fonts out there than there are vertical fonts out there. But I just rotate it myself. Then I don't have to worry about it. Control Z, Control Z. All right. Now we have a question from Leo Steger. How you doing, Leo? How do I print the drawing of my project? Okay, there are a couple of ways of doing this, Leo. And maybe you can clarify for me a little bit here. Are you just wanting to print, say, these vectors? If you are, there are a couple of ways of doing it over here in the File menu. If you mean you want to print a preview photo after you've calculated toolpaths and what have you, that's done over here. Say preview image after you've run your toolpaths. This is probably the most used one. You calculate your toolpaths, you preview your toolpaths, then you save a preview image. That's probably the most common. But if you mean you just want to print your vectors, like so, there are a couple ways of doing it. One, go up here to the File menu, come down here to, you have Print, Print Preview, and Print Setup. I usually go into Print Preview. And as soon as this, okay, this is the preview of what it's going to print. It's going to print an outline of your material size, and it's going to print the vectors you've created. Okay? Now, that may or may not be what you're looking for. Leo says, I want to print the vector. Okay. So we're on the right track here. Let me close this and see if zooming has any effect. Is this proportional, in other words? So I've just zoomed in. We'll go to Print Preview. And yes, it is proportional. So zooming in on it in the 2D view will allow you to kind of zoom in on that. On those vectors. If you don't necessarily need this outline, then great. Close. Now, Leo says, my printer will not print the vector. Okay. Just based on experience, if you print these vectors, these lines that in this case make up this font, these lines are very, very small. They're very light. You really got to be on your toes. Now, okay, Leo says, I have done that and it won't work. Okay. Then you have another option, and that is to come up here to File, Export, and export as a PDF. That will create a PDF file that can be opened for inspection. Now, having said that, let me zoom in here. All right. I'm going to File, Export, PDF. Now, I'm going to export all, Or I can export just the selected. That's where it comes in. Now I can export selected only. I can all visible layers or just certain selected layers. Okay? Selected layer is layer 1. That's the only layer I have. And the only sheet I have. Now, do you want to export the job bounds, or do you just want to export the vectors with or without that rectangle that represents the size of your material? If you don't want that, don't check it. Okay, we're going to export it, and I'm going to put it, I'll put it just on my desktop, and I'll get rid of it in a minute here. So we're going to call this MLCNC Vectors. And we're going to save it as a PDF. All right. Now I'm going to open my desktop, and I'm going to find MLCNC Vectors. And I'm going to open that PDF file, and of course it opens over here. And there are my vectors. Okay? So that is another way. And then I can just print this like I would any PDF file. Now, what about scale? Is the scaling of this PDF the same as the scale that I had on my project? So if this text was supposed to be an inch tall, is it an inch tall on the PDF? That's going to depend on how you have your printer set up. If you have your printers, excuse me. Don't know if I swallowed a bug or what. Man, there we go. If you have your printer set up to fit the whatever you're printing on a page, then it's not going to be to scale. If you have it set to print 100%, it should be to scale. It may have to posterize, which means split it up amongst several pages, and then you basically tape it back together to get full-size prints, unless you happen to have a large format printer or plotter. Now, on the other hand, with this PDF, let's open up a new instance of, let's open a Spire. That way I can tell the difference. That way I don't have the confusion of, am I in VCarve or which version of VCarve? We're going to create a new file. And we're going to say this is, 0.75. And yada, yada, yada. Everything is fine, except I'm not going to be doing any 3D work. We'll go OK. Now I'm going to import vectors from the desktop. And we're going to go look for that PDF. There it is. And we're loading. And it's way up here. All right. Center it. And you can already see that we has issues. Now, it's imported, but it's imported as vectors, line segments. It is not imported as closed vectors. So there is that. Now, what we can do, select, join. We have 4 closed vectors, 831 open vectors, and when closed, we'll have 52. Using the tolerance, well, let's try something that's normal here. 0.0004, that's the default from Vectric. Let's click that. And now we've got 52 closed vectors. Okay. Now we come here and boom. Okay, so those are all closed vectors now. And I don't see anything weird. It didn't like try to join the K with the S because I had my tolerance real small. But now let's look at the scale. I'm not going to pick on one particular letter. I'm going to look at the scale. Our width is 4.9216. Now let's go over here to vcarve. And I'm just going to select 4.9216. So it does import at the exact same scale it was exported at. Your X height and width are the same, vcarve or aspire. So you can export as a PDF and you can get those vectors. Problems are, number one, it's going to import as a bunch of line segments, so you have to join those line segments. Number two, these are now vectors. This is no longer a text object. So if I select this, go into text, I can't do any kerning or anything else because these are no longer text objects. Whereas over here in vcarve, close, these are all still text objects. And I can change font, I can do whatever I'd like. So, advantages and disadvantages. It really depends on what you're trying to do, Leo. If you've got a big project that won't fit on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of printer paper, then you're probably going to have to get into your printer settings and get it to posterize. And then you can export a PDF if your normal printing doesn't work. So, all right. And again, this is different from a preview photo when finished with the running the simulating the toolpath, previewing the toolpath. I know what I want to say. I just got to spit it out. Holy cow. Okay. Let's see. Then we had another. I hope that helps, Leo. We had another question from Bob Heltebridal, who wants to know, is there a way to set up the job setup tab to open up as a single-sided job with the Z0 material surface and XY datum position in the lower left every time? I have had a crash because I used different settings on a previous job. Let me ask you this about that, Bob. Did the crash happen while you were changing those settings, or did it happen after you changed the settings here in job setup and then clicked OK? So when did it crash? Now, as far as setting this up to have these single-sided job here, the material surface as a Z0 position and the XY datum position set up to be like, what did you say? XY datum position in the lower left every time. I don't think there's a way to do it every time because the software is set up to where it's going to save this setup, single-sided. It'll put in my width and height and thickness. All these settings will be remembered from the last project I saved, not the last project I created. If I created a project but didn't save it, then it won't remember this. But the way it's set up is I've got all my changes made from the last session of Aspire. But I haven't saved, or excuse me, last session of VCarve. But I haven't saved this file. So if I open up a new session of VCarve and create a new file, it doesn't remember. It remembers these from the last I saved, not from this instance. So it's the last file you saved. Now, Bob says it happened on the next job. Okay, so the next job, you opened it after making changes or before making changes? That's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering when the crash happened. And was the crash caused by these changes? It could have been anything. So, as far as it always being single-sided, XY datum position being the lower left and Z0 at the material surface, no, because that's not always a constant thing. If that is a constant thing with you and you save every file that way, the software will remember that. But you can get into the options by going to the edit menu and come down to options, but you will not find anything related to that. The closest you'll find is, and let's see where it is. Where is it? Save tab layout, very first one. But that has more to do with how your screen is set up. Do you have your design side and your toolpath side both open and pinned? So okay, Bob says, I didn't notice that the settings were from the last job. Okay, and then when you tried to change those settings, it crashed. That may not be related to the Vectric software. That may have been something else in the background interfering, and the whole thing said nope. Or it could very well have been something within the software. Maybe something got corrupted. Now, I have had that happen where a file gets corrupted for some reason. And usually one of the symptoms, one of the way you know, is if you look at the file size in the folder and it appears to be big. Like I had I was in VCarve Pro, I had a 2D drawing, and the file size was like 52 meg. That's a huge file. And the vectors I was that I wanted to use for V-carving for that file did not, there's no way it could have justified 52 meg. And then when I tried to open it, it crashed. It was a corrupted file. I don't know how it got corrupted. I just know that it did. Let's see. Bob says, I didn't notice the settings were from the last job. Okay. And it was my fault for not paying attention. It happens to everybody. It happens to everybody. Attention to detail is the key. And sometimes you lose focus, or you think that, I've done this 1,000 times. I don't need to double check that. And then, whoops, yeah, I do need to double check it. So the short answer to your question is no. There's no way to set it up to do that all the time, because the software will remember the settings from the last project you saved. So, all right. So does that answer your question? Was that good enough, or is there, was that not even approaching what you wanted to know? Okay. All right. Well, were there any other questions out here? Did I miss any questions out here. Other than Butch saying that he showed up with some cookies, some Coke, and the green crayons. Butch, don't eat the green ones. They're not ripe. Come on. You know that. Let's see here. And we got Leo's print question. I'm not seeing any more questions. No, nope. Okay. Well, I rarely make the same mistake 5 times. I'm good at coming up with new ones. Well, yeah, I'm that way as well. I never have to look for mistakes because they're always right there handy when when I get up in the morning. So it's a matter of, doesn't matter. We're human. It doesn't matter how experienced you are with this. It doesn't matter how experienced you think you are with this. If you overlook something, you overlook something. Our brain, the human brain, it's very good at filling in things that aren't really there. I mean, I'm sure you've seen these memes on Facebook or other Instagram, other social media, where there's a whole bunch of letters missing from a sentence. And if you can read this, then your brain is doing this. Your brain is filling in letters that are not there. So you can read what they're typing or what is typed. We will see a sentence that has words swapped around, and it makes complete sense to us. But it's still wrong. So, Funwayo wants to know, what is the power consumption of your Avid? I have no idea. But I can tell you that the spindle is on a 20 amp, 220 volt circuit. And the rest of the CNC, the control box, is on a 20 amp, 110 volt circuit. So it's not huge. So if you're wanting that kind of information, 20 amp circuits work. One of them is 220 for the spindle. It's separate. And then 20 amps for the rest of the control box. And they're on dedicated circuits. There's nothing else on those circuits. Let's see here. Kimberly wants to know, can you quickly remind me how to do circular text around a coaster, top and bottom, half arcs? I can show you that. Quickly is a relative term. Okay? So we'll get into it. We'll come back over here. Shaboom. Let's see now. I'll go ahead and I'll get rid of this text. Yeah, wait a minute. Which one is this? Yes, that is the text objects. Okay, so we'll get rid of that text. And first things first, I need to make a couple of arcs. So I'll draw an arc. And we'll go from here to here. And we're going to pull it to its full radius. Bonk. All right. And then we'll go, okay, we're going to smart snap. We're going to go straight down from that. We're going to click here. And we're going to smart snap to this end, come straight down. We're going to click there. And we're going to make that radius. Okay, close. Now I'm going to move these up and just kind of join them. And snap right there. Okay, so I've got two separate arcs. I could have just made a circle, went into node editing, and split them up. But I don't play with the arc tool enough. All right, so we're going to go into text. We're not going to do text in a box. We're going to do standard text. Okay? I'm tired of A.R. Delaney. I'm going to go find something else. Let's look at, oh heck, I don't know. We're gonna go real simple and just use Arial. And we're gonna go I'm just coming up with stuff here. I have no idea what I'm doing. Close, and that's way out of line. Let's come up here. Boom. All right. Now, I want to apply this text to this arc. It's way too big. I know it's way too big. So I've got my arc selected. Hold down Shift, select my text. Come over here to text on a curve. And it already made the jump. It has resized a little bit, and it's now bound to that curve. Now here's the thing. Do I want to maintain that text size? Or do I want to scale the text to fit the curve? Okay. Then my text position, do I want it above the curve? Do I want it on the curve? Do I want it below the curve? That's gonna change things. Then my text alignment. Right now it's aligned to the left, so it's way over here. And I got a lot of empty space over here. So I can align it to the middle, and that's going to space it evenly. Do I want to align it to the curve like it is now so that the letters are twisted? Or do I want to keep the letters vertical? That kind of looks goofy to me. All right. So I'll align it to the curve. Then let's select all that again. I'm going to scale the text to fit the curve. Ooh, that made it nice and big. Nah, I'll maintain that text size. Now I got to play with my text spacing. So right now it's not bad, but let me tighten it up a little bit. That's not tightening it up, that's loosening it up. Let's go the other way. Now I can adjust the spacing here, but I can also come in and I can do some kerning in between. But that has to be done in the text tool. Okay? So I've got this done. That looks okay. Close. Now, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say home, zip, bring you up here. All right. Good enough, I guess. Close. And we're going to select the text, select the arc, and we're going to go apply text to the curve. All right, now it's above the curve. We want it below the curve. And we don't want it aligned to the left, we want it aligned to the middle. I want to align it on the curve. And I'm going to maintain the text size. Scale text. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave the spacing. I'm going to kern it individually. We're going to leave it below the curve, and we're going to do OK. We're going to say OK to that. Now, I can select the text. I can still come back into my text box. I can still go in and I can adjust spacings individually. And it maintains that text spacing. Yeah, that looks better. Now I'll come up and select this text. and tighten up where it needs to tighten up. All right, there we go. So now, close that. I've got this set up. Looks okay. Not anything super special. I no longer need these arcs, so I can just delete them. Excuse me. But if I select my text and I go back in and I start kerning again, it remembers that circle. It remembers this arc. So having the arc there to apply the text to that arc or that curve, whatever it may be, you have to have the arc present when you first apply the text to the curve, not curb, Mark. But after that, you don't need it. You can actually delete those arcs so they're not there to confuse you when you're in your design process and have all these random vectors floating around. And there you go. That's applying text to a curve in a nutshell. You create the text, then you create the curves you want the text to follow. Then you come over here and you adjust the settings. Do you want the text above the curve, below the curve? You want it aligned to the left, the right, the middle? You want the text aligned to the curve? Or you want to keep each individual character vertical? Your text spacing, and again, this is adjusts the entire word. It doesn't take into account maybe the letters are too close to two letters are too close together, but the others are just fine. But it also remembers that arc even after you've deleted it. So if you come in and you make changes, let's say I want to change my text height to 0.75. It does it, but it remembers that arc. It's not going to change the orientation of the text. So that's text on a curve in a nutshell. Dave, I will answer this tomorrow, but the short answer to your question is no. You have to adjust them individually, as you said. Let's see what else we got going here. I see what you're doing, Kimberly. You can do that on your own. I see what you're doing. Let's see here. All right. Marvin Mays wants to know, how do we use the sloping toolpath? I think you mean the fluting toolpath. I want to put a juice groove on a cutting board that slopes to one corner. Okay. Let me entertain you. Let me make you smile. That's not what I wanted to do. I'm going to add another sheet. Add a new sheet. And I'm going to go into that sheet. Come down to my Sheets tab. I'm going to edit this sheet because I've never used a 12 by 12 cutting board. I'm going to edit that. And the height I'm going to leave at 12, but the width I'm going to make a big, this is a big cutting board, 20. All right. Okay. And we'll go back to the design tab. Now I want to, what do I want to do? I want to create a rectangle. And I want radius to external quarters. I want A 1-inch radius. No, I'm going to make a 3/4 inch radius, 0.75. And I'm going to make my height 11 and my width, what I have, 20. I'll make it 18, my width. And we'll create. All right. And of course, I had it set on my X0, Y0. All right, that is my cutting board. That's my profile cutout of my cutting board. Now I want to create a juice groove that runs down to one corner. Probably the easiest way to do this would be with, obviously, the fluting toolpath. But I'm gonna offset this vector inwards, and we're gonna go we're gonna go 3/4 of an inch. And this is just all by guess and by gosh. I don't want to create sharp corners, and I'm going to select new. Well, it created sharp corners anyway. All right, well, that's okay. We'll use a fillet tool, and I'm going to use a 0.75 radius, and I'll just shaboom, 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 and shaboom. Okay, so I've got my nice radius. This is going to be my juice groove. And I'm going to cut it with a 3/4 inch diameter core box bit. Or maybe I'll use my bowl bit. I'm not sure. Okay, so what I need to remember about the fluting toolpath is when it's going to, when I want everything to flow down into one area, it's got to have a start point and it's got to have an end point. I got to decide where that end point is going to be. So if I want it down here on this corner, I've got to get everything to flow to this corner. So this is where node editing comes in. So I've got the vector selected, and I'll tap the letter N. I'm going to come down here to the center of this span, right-click, and I'm going to say insert a point. So now I have a center point right there. And I'm going to cut the vector right there. Now I need to decide where I want the high point to be. And I'm trying to decide if I want it up here or do I want it up here. And have it slope down in this direction, both ways. I'm thinking it'll look more symmetrical if I go up here and make this my high point. So I'm going to come right over this center point here, right-click, insert a point, and cut the vector. Okay. Now we have a very, very important thing to take note of while we're here. I'm going to select this vector. I want this to be my start point because this is going to be the high point. So right-click, make start point. Now I'm going to select this vector. I'm going to do the exact same thing. Right-click, make start point. Now everything from here, when using that fluting toolpath, is going to flow downhill, downstream to this corner. So now, come over here, select this vector. Well, I'm going to get out of node editing first. Select this vector, and I'm going to do fluting toolpath. And I want to make a flute depth of 3/8 of an inch. So 0.375. And I'm going to use my 3/4 inch diameter core box bit. This may be too big, but we're going to find out. Select. Okay. My start depth. I want to have a little bit of start depth. So I'm going to start, it doesn't need to be super, super dramatic. I mean, the slope. But it does need to be there. I'm going to start with a 1/4 inch. Let's try that and see how that looks. I want to ramp it over the complete length. And I want it linear. I don't want to, I want it to start at a 1/4 inch here and slowly work its way down to 3/8 of an inch. Okay. And we're going to call that fluting 1. Calculate. Now I need to change this to toolpath color, just simply because I want that. All right, now I'm going to preview this toolpath here. And there we see an issue. Why did it start here and work its way? Oh, okay. All right. So it did start here at a 1/4 inch and work its way down to 3/8 of an inch. Yes, it did. Okay. And we'll go back to the 2D view. Select this one. Close. Another fluting toolpath using the exact same settings. 0.25, core box bit, ramp over complete length, linear, fluting 2, calculate. And we're going to preview that one. And it'll come back down and do that second cut, and shaboom, there we are. So we have a high point up here, low point down here. Now, I didn't take this into account when I created the design, but there really should be, you know, like a pour spout here or something like that. But it shouldn't be the same depth as this. You should still have to tilt that cutting board up to pour it out. So it's up to you to decide how deep you want that cut. But we'll get out of the preview window here, close it, and we'll go back to the 2D view. I need to shoot back over to the design side, and that'll be right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a straight line. I'll come right here. And I'm going to come out this way. It doesn't need to be that big, but what the heck. We now know that it's going to make it all the way through the material. And it will be cut off here. So, all right, we're good. All right. Now for this, we're not going to use the fluting toolpath because it'll only be used when we want to use it. So what we're going to do is go back over here and we're going to do a profile toolpath. Now, I don't want it to cut the same depth as this juice groove over here because I don't want stuff to come running down this way and then just start overflowing onto my countertop before I'm ready for it. So I'm going to cut this part of the groove the same depth as I did up here at the top. I'm going to cut it a 1/4 inch deep. So we're going to start at 0 and we're going to go 0.25. And I'm going to change. I want to use my 3/4 inch core box. And there it is. I'm going to select that. And we're going to cut on the vector. All right. It just happened to be set there already. It's going to do it in 2 passes. That's fine. And I'm not going to do any ramps, leads, or anything like that. We're going to call this spout. Calculate. And now we're going to preview that toolpath. Okay. Might do a little sanding on that corner. And we'll definitely do some sanding after we have the profile done. So we'll close our preview here. Straight to the top. 2D view. Select our outside vector. And I'm going to cut all the way through the material. So Z equals. And I'm going to use my, for something like this, I'll use my 1/2" end mill. Select. And I'm going to cut outside the vector. I am going to do a separate last pass with an allowance of 0.01. I'm not going to worry about tabs. I'm not going to worry about, yes, I will add a ramp. I'll add a smooth ramp over a distance of 2 inches. And we're going to call this cutout. And we'll calculate preview. And there is your cutting board with mitt juice groove. And a pour spout. I would do a little bit of sanding here to round that off a little bit. And the same thing right here. Round that off just a little bit. Now you do not have to put this in. You can make it a lot shallower. You can use a much smaller bit than I used. I just used the same bit because. Let's see. So that's basically it. In a nutshell, draw the vector to represent your juice groove. And in my case, I went to the top left corner, split that vector, and made both of these the start point. Then come down to the opposite corner and split that vector and made both of these the end point. Then fluting tool paths, a juice drain, and then a profile cutout. Cigar ashtray. Yeah, sure. Sure. Kimberly wants to know, can we see the board you made for Linda? It's in the house. I don't know if I have a picture of it on this computer. But if you're patient with me, where did I put that? Where did I put those pictures? Let me take a gander here. Did I put it in here? I'm cutting board. Duh. Oh, here we go. That's the cutting board I made for Linda. That is chaos grain, chaos pattern, made from scraps that I had laying around in here. Then a maple border around that, and then a walnut border around that. That's the cutting board I made for Linda. And the finish is maple, mineral oil and beeswax for a finish over the top. And she refuses to let me use it. These are some in-progress photos. That was one of the glue-ups that I actually got a picture of. And this is after being cut up 3 or 4 different directions. Then that was the chaos center after surfacing and everything. Then there's the maple border. And then there's the finished thing. I didn't document this very well because I knew that it wasn't going to be, a video made out of it or anything. And I think that's it. Yeah, those are the only pictures of that. These are a lot of fun. I don't know, did I? I have a couple of videos here. Oh, I remember this. I did this for Facebook and set it to, oh, come on. You going to do this to me now? Media player, you've been doing this to me. I made this for Facebook and set it to some, I don't know that I can use the word that I want to use. Let's just say very risque. Oh man, media player, you're killing me. I use some very risque music. Let me open this with something else here. Open with, let's try movies and TV. Now I got to drag you over here. And there we go. I did this to some very sexy music, as you can imagine. This was for Facebook. Slow-mo. You can't hear the music, and it's probably a good thing. Let your imagination run wild. I have VLC player. I just don't use it. How did you get it to fit into the walnut so perfectly? Is there any interest in me making a video of how I did these cutting board? You know, and flip it over and do the backside. Always got to do the backside. Get your mind out of my gutter, Bob. But yeah, is there any, I mean, I'm not a cutting board. This is not a cutting board channel. I can show it. That's not an issue. But, basically what man, it's hard to describe. Easy to show, but hard to describe. And I don't know if I took any pictures of my cutting board. My big one. Yeah. I think we've had enough of this. Anyway, that was set up. And for those wondering, yes, that is a rib rack for a Weber kettle. That's what I used to stand it up and let it drain. Yeah. So now escape. Let's get out of there. Come on. Close. All right. I don't think that I have another photo of my big cutting board. Let's go to clock. No, I don't have cutting board. End grain cutting board. Let's see. No, this is all Linda's. No, this was mine, I think. Is this mine? Yeah, that's mine. That's my big cutting board. There we go. See, Barry Lane says, I make a ton of cutting boards, and there is always one more way to make them. Every design is nice. Agree with you 100%, Barry. I agree with you 100%. If you've got scrap wood that you want to use up, end grain cutting boards are the way to do it. Every piece of walnut you see in this board and the previous board, every piece of walnut you see is recycled flooring. It was solid walnut flooring. Let's see. For Linda's, I remember when you first made it, you were not pleased with the size using the maple border and you added the walnut. Yes. And the way I did it, Kimberly, on Linda's board was the same way I did this. Okay? If you have to look carefully at the corners, and you can see the walnut comes down and runs to right here. Okay? This seam where the field meets the walnut, you follow that seam right through to here, to this piece. Okay? So what I did was I glued up a panel of walnut. I glued up a couple of panels of walnut in this case. But I glued the long sides on first. I made a panel and glued them on here. Then got that, let that cure. Got it out of the clamps, and I did a profile cut so that it cut the ends off here and trimmed everything down to the right dimension. Then I applied the ends, separate panels. I don't think I have any pictures of this. That was, this was just starting to put the pattern together. You can see some pieces are longer than others. I don't think I have any. I have video of it, but I don't think I have any still pictures of it, because I was going to do a video on this, and I still might. Those were the panels that I made that out of. And basically all this is I had scrap long enough to glue up this panel, then glue up that panel, then that panel, then that panel, then that panel. Then once I had all of these surfaced nice and smooth and cut to proper dimensions, they're all the same width, but they're, of course, different lengths because I had different size pieces of scrap. Then I glued them up. Well, media player. I glued them all up, trued them all up, and then let's try it. Open with Movies and TV. There we go. Bring it over this way. I was talking during this. Then, yes, that's my initial layout, what that's going to look like when I glue those together. Okay? Totally was not prepared for this. Come on. How do I... Okay, there we go. Get it out of full screen that way. There we go. Then took it over to the table saw. Oh, no, this was doing something else. What was I doing here? Oh, flip them over and cut them again. Cut them into smaller pieces. Rip those panels. So all those panels I ripped one more time. After I glued up the panels, I ripped them and glued them back together 3 times. So let me do that with, there we go. So like this panel, ripped. Come on. There we go. And you can see how, for instance, on this cut, and this is why I don't sew table saw, I've got just a little bitty piece, a little bitty sliver of walnut right there. I'm cutting these all to the same width. And because these are varying widths of pieces glued into this panel, when I change them around and glue this panel back up, they're going to be in a different position. And I can mix and match however I want, like I'm doing there, to get, maybe I've got too much maple. Oh, that was the leftover piece. That was the last piece that I cut off. And I'll glue that up. And like on this big piece, some of them I'll spin 90 degrees because I'm cutting these into squares. And I move like woods away from one another. See how that's doing that, Ellen? The light bulb just went on. I was wondering how you glued scrap when it was all different. Yes, I just make panels that are all the same size. They're all the same length and all the same, well, they're all the same width. Then you probably don't care about this, but I'm gluing panels together on my gluing station and using my Dubuque clamps. So I've got glue all over the place. Then the next is unclamping, cleaning up some of the snail trails of glue, which is not a fun job. I do not use a planer in any of this. My planer sucks. And then once that's done, the next step is to cut them up again. We're going to cut them into end grain pieces this time. And I want to make all of the end grain strips the same width. So for instance, out of this panel, I only got 3 pieces. But that's okay. It'll still work in this cutting board, and it used up that short scrap rather. And because I'm Scottish, that little thin piece right there, I did break that up and it went into an epoxy project. But all of these strips are the same width. Then when you turn them up end grain, then we go. This is weird showing videos this way. So I've got all of my panels cut up. Now I'll take one, go to the next line, take another. Nope, not that one. We'll go with this one because I don't want to put too much maple together and I don't want to put too much walnut together. And then just flip every other piece and kind of spin it around and just go for it. And the pattern shows itself. And I can still change anything. I can still change the patterns up until the moment I start gluing it together. So if I don't like how something is looking, I can change it. But I'll cut them and glue them together, cut the panels up and glue them back together 3 times. Then when I get this all glued up, get the pattern figured out, there's my pattern. The tapping of the fingers is me deciding how I want to go from there. Where do I want to go from there? Because again, I'm trying to get the woods separated. I don't want too much walnut or too much maple right close to one another. And in this board, I had everything from, let's see, what have I got? I've got Wenge, I've got walnut, I've got maple, I've got oak, I've got myrtle. There are pieces of wood in this board and Linda's board that I've been carrying around for 30 years. Some of it is white oak that I got when we were stationed in Germany. There's wood from all over the place here. What I didn't show is what I did with Linda's board, because I didn't do it on this cutting board. I glue up the panel like so. That's the rough panel, glued up. Then on Linda's board, I cut this panel up 3 times long ways and 3 times width ways. Cut it up, flip the pieces around, glue it back together. The problem is every time you cut it up, you remove material. I have a glue line, thin kerf glue line rip blade from, it's not CMT, it is Freud. Very good blade. But the thin glue line rip blade takes out a 0.09 kerf. It's not an eighth of an inch. I couldn't do that with this one because it would have made this panel too small. On Linda's board, let me go back to that other. Let me open that in a new window. On Linda's board, and you can see it here in this picture, I cut the pieces up on an angle, 3-degree angle, when I ripped them, using my using that thin line ripping blade and using my miter gauge. Set it at a 3-degree angle, and I cut it at an angle. Again, 3 times. Cut it at an angle, glue it together. Cut it at an angle, glue it together. So that when it was all said and done, that is the pattern that it came out with. Now, I only cut it at an angle this direction. I did not cut the angle this way. That would have confused it even more. That would have made it even more chaotic. But you can see how small some of these pieces are. And I have had people ask me, how did you glue these together? How did you glue that little piece right there? I didn't. I just glued together a bunch of panels. Then cut them up into end grain strips and just kept cutting them up. Making cutting boards like that are a lot of fun. And you can use basically any scrap. The shortest scrap I've ever used to make a cutting board was about 4 inches long. And I just glued up it's a real short panel, and clamped it up, and it's good enough to make one panel. It'll make one stripe. One thing I will say, however, if you're going to make end grain cutting boards, and you don't have to make chaos patterns, you can make any pattern you want. But if you're going to make end grain cutting boards, part of the secret of them is cutting that panel up, flipping everything up end grain, and then rotating every other piece 90 degrees. Or, 180 degrees. So you've got it like this, then you want to flip the next one over like that. So you're looking at, you want to flip it end for end. If you do that and you have, say, one feature strip, you've got one piece of walnut and the rest of it's a maple board. Make that one piece of walnut, put it off to the side. Don't put it in the middle. Put it off to the side. And then flip every one so that every other strip, the walnut's over here, then it's over here, then it's over here, then it's over here, then it's over here. The reason for that is It's when you're doing all this gluing and cutting, it's very difficult to keep a straight line running right up the center. And so if you flip all these pieces and get it all put together nice and pretty, that strip of walnut is going to be slightly off unless you are really, really good. That ain't me. So by having that feature color off to the side, doesn't have to be lined up perfectly. But if you're trying to keep it running right down the middle, it does have to be lined up perfectly. And that's difficult to do because things move even after you've tightened up the clamps and walked away. You don't like to do this. I don't like to walk away from the mic, but I just reached over to my scrap bucket. These are scraps from cutting board making. They will go into another cutting board. They will end up in another cutting board because I can use it. If you want to get into making end grain cutting boards, be it chaos pattern or any other pattern, lots of geometric patterns I've seen. I've seen tumbling block, which is an old quilting pattern. You've seen tumbling block, you just don't know it by that name. But I'm confident in saying that you have seen it. There are all kinds of 3D effect cutting boards, butterfly, they call them, various different cutting board styles. There is one place I would send you, and I will look for his channel right now. This is my cutting board guru. Andre is his name. He's in Russia, and his YouTube channel is called MTM Wood. Now, he has a lot of very beautiful boards that he makes and a lot of videos. He hasn't released a video in a lot of years. I don't know why. Come on. There we go. This is his YouTube channel. And these are some of the 3D boards that he makes and inlaid cutting boards that he makes. I'm just going to go to his videos feed and scroll down here. The guy is a wizard. And these are the chaos grain cutting boards that he makes. This is the guy I learned from. Remember that he is in Russia, and so he speaks Russian. And turn your closed captions on. But, I mean, the results speak for themselves. This guy, he's a wizard. He's absolutely amazing with what he does. And he's got a huge library of videos. So check him out. I will put a link to Andre's channel down in the description, or down in a pinned comment at the top of this. The first comment you'll see as soon as we're done live here. But he's my guru. He's my cutting board guru. And everything I know about making end grain cutting boards, I got from watching Andre. So, again, MTM Wood. I'll put a link down in the description as soon as we're finished here. Not in the description. I'll put it in a pinned comment. So we got way, way off the track as far as CNC is concerned, but not as much as you would think, because even with end grain cutting boards, what I did, I don't use my planer. I did not use my planer at all for any of that. When I glued up panels, I put them on the CNC and surfaced them flat. When I glued everything together and needed to make a nice, neat rectangle, I attached it to my spoil board, took my 1/2 inch diameter end mill, and I cut it to the size I wanted it. When I wanted to start applying the borders, I did the long sides first, cut that rectangle so that those long sides ended with the panel, then glued the short sides on, then added more border and built around that. All of the surfacing, all of the profile cutting, the juice grooves added were all done on the CNC. The beauty about using a CNC, especially with end grain, is if you have your CNC trammed and it's cutting nice and flat, using my 2-inch surfacing bit, it was maybe 10 minutes with 220 grit. I didn't even go to 150. 220 grit sandpaper on my random orbit sander and just sand it. I didn't have any milling marks. There's no blowout. The cutter is spinning radially, so it's shaving off those fibers. It's not tearing them out. So you don't get the tear out from figured woods where grain is going in weird directions. It doesn't matter what direction the grain is running. It's cutting it radially. And that's true if it's flat grain, when you're cutting the faces of the panels you've glued up. Or if you've got it all glued up, the panel glued up end grain. You know? And as far as it being flat or rocking or anything like that, I would simply use shims. You can get cheap pine shims in the back in the lumber department at Lowe's or Home Depot. Come in a package. There's a whole bunch of them bundled together. Just shim them. And see that big white ball right there? That's double-sided tape. That ball is the double-sided tape I use to hold down all those panels. And surfacing doesn't put as much pressure on as you'd think. Barry Lane says, I use my CNC to surface as well until they get a big drum sander. I don't have any room in my shop for a drum sander. I'd love to have one. I really would. But I just don't have the room for it. And I designed this building for a drum sander. I had laid out all the electrical for a drum sander. Then I ended up with this behemoth and no room for that drum sander. So, hey, I'd rather have this than the drum sander. What can I say? But if you're lucky enough to have both, yeah. All right. We really got off track, but I'm right now, that will end up in a cutting board somewhere. I don't believe that it's not scrap until I can't glue it to something else or embed it in epoxy. So that's just me being Scottish. But I figured I paid the same price per board foot for this as I did for the wood that went into whatever project I bought this for. So as much of this as I can use, I'm going to use it. And I don't care about gluing small pieces together. I scored some ebony piano keys. That's going to end up in a cutting board because I can't think of another use for them. But what can I say? Probably more than one cutting board. Anyhow, let's go ahead and wrap this up. It's been an hour and a half. Holy cow. Let's see. Tomorrow, channel members, Michael Bernasconi and I, we're going to get into some layered projects. I know a couple of the channel members, talking to you, Ellen, and I'm talking to Marie as well, but Marie's not here today. We're going to get into some layered projects, and we're going to demonstrate 2 different types of layered projects. So that's tomorrow evening, and these layered projects can be done in VCarve. They can be done in Aspire. Doesn't matter. And we're going to be using all 2D vectors. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's a lot of creative stuff we're going to be diving into. showing you how to use other people's patterns as well as creating your own. That's tomorrow, 5:30 Eastern and 8:30. No, 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. I just swapped coasts. Wowzers. Anyhow, lack of sleep. Anyway, that's tomorrow. Also, remember Saturday, just general BS Zoom calls. We had a great one last night. It was a lot of fun. I will post a link to those Zoom calls when the Zoom call starts on the posts page of my YouTube channel. And when the Zoom call is finished, I delete that post. So look for it roughly 5-ish Pacific, 8-ish Eastern on Saturday evenings. It's not broadcast anywhere, just a bunch of people hanging out. We talk CNC, we talk laser, we talk barbecue, we talk other hobbies, we talk sports, we talk whatever. It's just general BS. Don't forget, members, the super secret Facebook group. Email me your contact info and we'll get you involved in that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, or you'd like information on how to become a channel member, be part of that super secret Facebook group, the live chat and the Saturday BS sessions and the Monday live streams. Right below this video panel, you'll see the word join. Click on that button. Now, you're not joining anything. You're just getting information, and you can join from there if you'd like. So click that join button. Check it out. We have a great group of people. Seriously, some of the best people I've ever met. I've been blessed to meet. And we'd love to have you be a part of that. So that's it for channel members for today. Next week, what am I going to do? I'm on day 200 of the great shingles outbreak. It's been since April. I'm getting some control back in this hand. I am going to attempt, don't hold me to this, I'm going to attempt to get a video out. If I can't, I'm going to say by the end of this month. I'm going to try for it. I really am. I haven't released a video since March. We'll see what happens, but no promises. Don't quote me on it. If not, we'll do another open Q&A and I'll have another topic. I'll pick one at random and we'll run for it. I just go for the gusto. Other than that, I can't think of anything else that I may or may not be forgetting. Channel members will discuss the elephant in the room tomorrow evening. So I guess without any further ado, I'll say thank you for spending part of your Sunday with me. I hope everything's going well for you. So go do something cool. Either go out and make some chips or sit down and eat some chips. It's up to you. Have a good day. Have a good time. And remember, it's all supposed to be fun. Thank you very much for spending part of your Sunday with me. And y'all take care.